Travis Wingate. So I I remember going to high school at Corona, or in Corona, at Norco High School. It's a little bit complicated. We were separated by the freeway, and my parents had bought a subdivision home, new subdivision home, on the west side of the freeway, but still in Corona, because we were right there at the border between Norco and Corona. Corona means Crown, Norco means North Crown. So I was educated at the Northern Crown, living in Crown. And so yes, Corona beer, we all knew Crown beer. And yeah, I think it was a social studies class. I have difficulty recalling much more from that class than the one and only day that I remember. It was the one and only day that the teacher introduced us to logical argument. And it turned into a debate between Mason Wooldridge and the teacher as to Reagan and his Reagan economics. We had all of the radio announcers back in the day who are now talk show hosts. Getting in trouble for seeking to overthrow America. But logical argument was not taught. I assume you have to go into debate to learn about it. I didn't go into debate, and very few people did. It wasn't a popular thing to do. And my dad told us that he had taken debate, and yet I always beat him in an argument as a kid. I remember him complimenting me one time while we were on a family vacation, and as you can probably tell, I'm large of stature. My sisters are not large of stature. And that always required to have one of us in the back of the station wagon. And only the older generation knows about this. Station wagon? Is that like a hand cart, like the pioneers used, that we do on our trek every year before coronavirus? Almost. Except it had horsepower. And so when there's four of us, it tends to get kind of squished, and thus the need to put someone in the back. And so it had to be turned into a popular thing to sit in the back, except that it gets very hot back there. But they didn't have the concern for kids being locked in the heated car back in those days. Nonetheless, my sister Tiffany was sitting next to me on one such trip, and she was complaining that I was invading her bubble space. and starting a fight. She's younger, but because she's the oldest sister of the sisters, younger sisters, they're all younger than me, she felt like she was the one getting ignored, and so she didn't want to be ignored, so she purposely caused problems to get attention and get her way. That's how she learned to manipulate our parents. And so I was trying to tell her, I can't. And I physically demonstrated, I'm this big, this wide. You are this wide. I'm at the door, and you're telling me I'm invading your space. And had to go over, if we were to do it equally, you would have a lot more space for my space, but because we're cramped, I take up more space, as I am wider than you are, and so you require less space than my space that is required. And then my dad turned around and said, that was a very good argument, and shut Tiffany up right quick. And there's people, even my mom, who would talk about common sense. And that's a fallacy argument, because it assumes that the majority opinion rules as to what truth is. Because what if the common sense was nonsense? Ta-da! There's a flood of fallacious arguments over this whole nation and in this Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Wikipedia has a list of fallacies. It's titled List of Fallacies. And it goes over the two main categories, formal versus informal. And then there are numerous listings of fallacies under each dichotomous category. And these are not behavioral, so they are not a fallacy argument in and of themselves. Psychology, Mormon Stanley Smith Stevens, psychologist who moved to Colorado to do his work, where our government also had their base of operations. Yes, he is responsible. But they use this scientific categorization system on human behavior so that they can brainwash and manipulate the whole entire world, but specifically for America, for the United States. And so you have these pseudo-scientists, fake scientists, junk scientists, who are given expert witness status in court hearings. They're first responders. Oh, there was a shooting at a school. Well, we'll go in and tell them to cope with it, rather than seek to have the person punished who caused the shooting. But of course our government, as we all know in the MAGA world, they're trying to take our guns! Now, the Democrats always love school shootings to justify gun regulation, because guns are to blame for a person shooting people. And so when you got psychologists who are telling kids to cope with it, oh, well, shootings are just a part of life. You need to process your own inner feelings to not let it destroy you. So keep coming back for the rest of your life. Here, I'll write a prescription for drugs. I'm trying to help you. We need to lock all these people up. But they got into our school systems, as well as our courts and our government. Because if you didn't notice, we really only have two-party government, bipartisan. You hear thrown around in the news all the time. And when an independent party candidate tries to run for office, everybody shames him for trying to take voters away from their party. Have any of you even read the Constitution? We're not supposed to have party government. Independent candidates, no party affiliation. Nonetheless, that's part of the trick. Keep people dumb. Withhold information so that you force them to know only what you want them to know. And our school systems, even back in my day, it was all about memorization. That was my education. We were forced to memorize stuff. In every single class, memorize. Not just math, but in government. Oh, we have to memorize dates. We have to memorize events. Memorize names of people. In high school, at Norco, our government teacher was a hippie peacenik protester of the wars. And so he would just sit at his desk, feet up on the desk, and play a video for us, as the rest of the class was just socializing, ignoring the video, and we were supposed to do a paper on it and turn it in by the next day, if we didn't bother to turn it in that day. Easy A. And only my older generation of viewers know what I'm referring to. The youth know nothing of war protesting. Blood on the wire. But I learned about fallacies from the University of Lethbridge in Canada. Married a Canadian half-breed at Rick's, and she introduced me to free babies, adorably cute babies, for which they've been taken away from me by her. Another sore subject, but we're coming to that. And so I'm educated, degreed, and published, among other things, on logical argument. Philosophy of science was the subject. And if you think that philosophy is just sharing your opinion, it's so disgusting, the tactics that the enemy uses to change definitions. If you saw Bill Mayer's new rules last week, he talks about democracy and says that he's using the general term and acknowledges that there's a specific democratic form of government, but he's not referring to that, and he makes that clear. Except I hear it time and time and time throughout this nation, even in the media and by our government leaders. And so Bill Mayer, even though he thinks he's siding with all of the government and news agencies. He's not. Because Democrats interpret democracy far different. Because in a legal, fair contest, Democrats always win the vote of the people. And so, yes, they want democracy, whereas conservatives don't want democracy, but they claim democracy in a different definition. And again, read the Constitution. We are not to have a democracy. And even in the general sense, it's really not justified to say that we are a democracy. We utilize the democratic general principle of voting only to vote for representatives, not party candidates, representatives, individual persons. A constitutional republic. And we are not being told this in our school systems. We are not being taught about logical argument. We are misinformed on definitions. Even though we have vocabulary tests and we're supposed to be able to define them, as we're supposed to memorize the definitions and the spelling of the words. And yet our school systems have also been corrupted, as the Webster's Encyclopedia or Dictionary caters to the changing definitions of words. Urban Dictionary already has all of the changing that occurs in society, but to have Webster go along with it's confusing, because you need to put in, this year, this word was changed to this definition. The origin from this date is this definition. And that is lacking in all dictionaries. But there's more. Psychologists, because they focus on behavior, seek to conform human beings to their chosen behavioral system. This is an ethical pattern that they are doing. They are forcing human beings to conform and comply to their programming ethical standards and values, just like a religion. And yes, I am educated, degreed, and published on ethical arguments. You've probably heard about it's black and white. Yeah, that's one ethical argument. And it's wrong, it's fallacious, needs to be dismissed. That's the problem with the ethic categorizations that are listed under the Wikipedia page, ethics. You'll see that there are multiple categories, not just a dichotomous categorization and list of fallacies. You have meta-ethics, normative ethics, applied ethics, and moral psychology. Oh, look at that! How did I know? And then there's also descriptive ethics. And then there's subcategories within all of these. It is huge. Let me just read over the subcategories for you on all the different types of ethical belief systems you can have. Moral skepticism, virtue ethics, stoicism, contemporary virtue ethics, intuitive ethics, hedonism, Syrianic hedonism, Epicureanism, state consequentialism, utilitarianism. You've probably been aware of that, even though you may not have heard it called utilitarianism. Deontology, Kantianism. Immanuel Kant is who they're referring to there. Divine command theory. You've heard that over the pulpit of conference. God, I was so pissed when that member of the 70 pulled that stunt. Discourse ethics. I did a paper on how Constantine's creation of Jesus is Lucifer, using the divine command theory. Pragmatic ethics. Ethics of care. Feminist. Matrixal ethics. Oh my God. Role ethics. Anarchist ethics. Postmodern ethics. Specific questions. Particular fields of application. These are applied ethics. So it's under a different listing, but each has their own different theory that they utilize. And so bioethics, business ethics, machine ethics, military ethics, political ethics. I don't see legal ethics. Legal ethics needs to be put up here, as I just got victimized by my legal counsel again. Public sector ethics, publication ethics, relational ethics. So, did you not pay attention? My knowledge, education, degree, and publication experience, I'm able to correct this. You just witnessed me correct this. Relational ethics, ethics of nanotechnologies, ethics of quantification, animal ethics, plant ethics. There are those humans who want to have plants overthrow humans using the survival of the fittest, natural selection ethics of Darwin. The guy was pure evil and used fallacy to develop his theories, which all need to be dismissed because they're fallacious. That's the thing that ethics is not doing here. They list them all as if we can just pick and choose which one we want to utilize in our life, and we become educated in how we live our lives. No! My specific teacher in philosophy of science, when talking about this, discussed the fallacy of that. Because even Star Trek deals with the subject matter, with the prime directive. When you discover a new civilization, we've had this on Earth, where previous colonizers and I can't remember the people who go searching. Dear God, struggling for the word. Who find a different culture. Once you expose yourself to the culture, they are changed forever. Their whole course is now going to go in a different direction had you stayed away from them. Thus, Star Trek deals with that ethical debate. Do we change their course, or do we allow them to continue as is? So the Vulcans, giving you a little Star Trek lesson here, when they make first contact with humans, it's because what's his name developed the ability for space travel, and I believe even not just space travel, but was it the warp technology? And so the Vulcans realized, okay, they are now at the level where we can now introduce ourselves and make first contact. And then the Borg are involved, and chaos ensues. But psychologists use fallacies and they're with evolutionary ethics. And there's more involved with that they're not listing either. So yes, I need to go over this and fix it. There's more that needs to be put in here. But you do not know me. You do not understand. And so Mormons do not know that Joseph Smith had a completely different moral system than is listed in that Wikipedia page. Joseph Smith's morality is not listed. I wonder if there's somebody who might have published about it. Now, so when I first started doing YouTube videos on Travis Wayne Goodsell, it was the glory days. But looking at the analytics for the lifetime of my channel, I see that it's somewhat well balanced between all age categories. And if you didn't know, it's 18 to 24, 25 to 34, 35 to 44, 45 to 54, 55 to 64, 65 up. And what are you doing going back? Not. You can see the difference between males and females. Males are purple, women are blue. Psychologists have attached emotions to colors and attached gender to colors. That's part of their fallacious trap that they try to put people in. Tell me how you feel. What does this color make you feel like? So McDonald's, being influenced by psychologists, told them, hey, do yellow. People, as we have programmed, believe that being in a yellow environment makes them feel happy and friendly. And you want that when you want them to buy your products. You don't want them to think, oh, this is the worst place ever, so dark and gloomy. Interesting thing, babies are born colorblind. They can't see color at first. It takes time for their eyes to develop and eventually see color. And sometimes people have the situation where they can't see red, for example. And so presenting color to a baby is worthless. And so black and white is their world until color is developed. And this concept of turning the color black, which actually isn't really a color, it's the absence of color, and it's not quite, it's confusing trying to explain it. It's a kind of a mix of all colors, and white is the absence of color, but anyway. Blue is typically a boy's color now, because of psychologists. purple is the color of royalty. So for YouTube to use this with all of this already in place to brainwash people, you see that YouTube is male-centric, male-egoed, into referring to men as royalty and women as submissive blue. Just so that you know, it's what's called a Freudian, but once you understand this, you can learn that this is all ridiculous. But when people are known to be brainwashed into the system, self-fulfilling their self-fulfilled prophecies, you can then manipulate people and control their behavior. That's exactly what the psychologist did, and you can see how YouTube has fallen prey to psychologists in utilizing this, and then they're passing it on to us as creators to get us into thinking of men as royal purple and women as submissive blue. And then the unspecified, oh, they're the friendly yellow. Those are your LGBTQIAPO+. So you can see exactly the emotional manipulation, the psychological emotional manipulation that they're trying to pull on us, because psychologists have manipulated them. But you can see the percentage of views of each category, and then the percentage of watch time per hour. And even though the younger generation is equaled, except for the 18 to 24-year-old girls and 25 to 34-year-old girls, those used to be my biggest audience, other than the cougar generation of mine, 55 to 64 years old. Those women are not as big as the men of that generation, but yeah, over the lifetime, you can see that the younger generation of girls were interested in the videos that I was putting out. Then we go to this morning on TWG. Gutted. You see a few girls in the 25 to 34-year-old range and my generation. But the majority of people who watch my channel on TWG are of the retired age generation and above. And the majority of them are prophets of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Those in leadership in the church. I tell you guys, they know what I'm doing. They're very well aware, and they're very concerned. You guys, the rest of you, are completely oblivious and are disconnected from what's going on. The older generation from me, yeah, they know exactly what I'm talking about. That's why I've been destroyed. But the rest of you, they have brainwashed you. You no longer know the religion that the older generation knows. This is a completely new church, not just from my generation, but also from Joseph Smith. The generation below me are further distanced from what Joseph Smith was all about. This is how successful the church is. If you consider that destroying the church is what they mean by success. I did the videos. They are purposely destroying this church. And so the channels, even of ex-Mormons, that are popular, are helping to perpetuate and spread this distancing from Joseph Smith, which was, again, the video I did yesterday for you. This is horrific. And I can see it. I'm educated, degreed, and published in it as well. But there is a huge disconnect. You are not being taught the same Mormonism that I was taught. You are not being taught the Mormonism that Joseph Smith restored. What good is it to restore a church if successors or claimed successors don't even bother to continue your restorations? The older generation gets this. They understand. And they want me silenced and shut up. But it's the younger generation that are going to take the fall for it. King Noah was a bad guy, but the legal successor as the son of Zenith. So his people, seeing him as the king now, oh, okay, well, I guess it's okay to do and be as the king. Because he's doing it, his priests are doing it, I guess it's okay, I'm going to do it too. I'm having fun destroying my fellow brother and neighbor. Isn't that great? Oh, don't you come after me. You have to forgive me. Oh, Nelson. He was talking to me. And again, he misinterpreted Scripture. Again. The guy is completely illiterate for Scripture interpretation. Turn the other cheek? Oh my God. Christians have been making that error for millennia. But to see Nelson use it? We have section 98, or is it 89? One of them is the word of wisdom, the other one is about restitution with forgiveness, comparing the two different kinds. But dear God, take your right hand and smite someone on their right cheek. Face them and do it. You can't. You have to backhand them. And so when you turn the left cheek, now they can do it. So why would Jesus say to let people punch you? Do you know anything about Jewish law? Oh, you don't? It's called the first blood law. I refer to Sylvester Stallone in First Blood, or Rambo's, that whole series. His ending movie, as much as it was setting the whole thing up as a tragedy, and the Greeks are the tragedy, I'm telling you, you guys are not being properly educated anymore. But he summed it up at the ending scene. And it is heartbreaking. I literally, he did very good with that series. As much as people love to make fun of him. So, dear God, Mormons, I see the danger, and you just don't care. You're just like the people of King Noah, and I'm Abinadi, and you don't get it.